Hey there, Squirrel Army, how's it going today? I am looking at cards from Karlov Manor, and this one is Warleader's Call.
You can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing.
Alright, so it's a 3-mana Boros enchantment, so red and white. Creatures you control get +1/+1, which is an okay buff. Most buffs, are about 3 mana and give +1/+1, so this is fine. Whenever a creature you control enters the battlefield, this deals 1 damage to each opponent. Now that's really good as well, because most of these sort of ping style creatures or enchantments and whatnot are about 2 or 3 mana or so. So again, that's pretty on rate. To have them both together, a creature buff and a ping style of an effect for each opponent, is pretty darn good. So I think that if you're in any kind of Boros deck and you're playing a generic card or even a couple of generic cards that are sort of similar to this, then you probably just want this, because it does the same job as those sorts of cards, buffing your stuff up or pinging your opponents, and it does both of those things. So you just really want this. Like, I have some of the other ones that are a little bit better, like Perfrost, like old Perfrost, and things like that. There are a couple that aren't quite on the same par with it. But, if I'm in a Boros deck and I want some pinging effects, I'll just take this over, a whole bunch of other things or a whole bunch of other buffing things, because it does so much more than just a buff. It does so much more than just a ping effect. It does both of them together at the same time. So that's really useful for those sorts of decks. And whatnot, because again, you can't just rely 100% on having to win through combat, because the people play cards and combos and whatnot that prevent that from really being a thing. You can still do that kind of stuff, certainly, and I do, but you want other ways to win as well. You want a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, E, F, blah, 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 blah. So this can help you with that. It can help you with your main plan of just attacking people and buffing up your stuff. Plus, again, just buffing up your stuff doesn't just mean that you're having to win an attack. It means that if your opponents happen to attack you, well, now your creatures have more power and more toughness so that they can block more easily. If something like Elish Norn comes down, old Elish Norn, well, everything gets -2, -2. Well, this gives them +1/+1. So if you had any, creatures that were 1/1s, yeah, they're probably still dead. But, if you had 2/2s, well, now they're 1/1s. So, yeah, maybe that's not that good, but they're still alive. They didn't just die. Whereas before, they would just die to Elish Norn. Of course, if you got your own Elish Norn, it's pretty darn good, but still, that's another thing. But again, it's just one of those things where you, I don't know that there's any real downside to this sort of card. Maybe you want a critical mass of these. So, if you're more into, just, I've got to ping people, well, sure. But this does do that. And, again, not every deck is in these 2 colors. But again, if you are in these 2 colors and you want to buff your creatures, which is something that most decks do want to do anyway, or if you want to ping people, which again is a pretty good effect to do, you can just replace your impact tremors or whatever else you've got in there and just put this in there, because it does the same thing as impact tremors, plus it buffs up your creatures. And again, it depends on what you're doing, but if you really want that impact tremors in there as well, or as well as your Perfrost or anything else that's in there that helps you ping your opponents, well, you find some other random enchantment, like, again, that just gives your stuff +1/+1 or whatever, and you take that out. Like, again, this is the problem with, like, some of the power creep in Magic today is, like, there's so many good cards that people don't play a lot of that sort of stuff anymore, but still, like, this is probably worth playing because of the ping more so than the buff. But certainly the buff you won't sneeze at, you won't just, like, go, oh, well, that doesn't do anything. It certainly doesn't doesn't do a lot, but for 3 mana, it's probably not that bad of an investment. It's kind of very reminiscent of both of the colors of this card, because white's like all about buffing things and red's all about burn. So it's a really good like flavor win in that way as well. So I like that. That's kind of cool and whatnot. But still, it is just one of those things that I think like the power creep in Magic is pushing cards more and more to being more and more like cards like this. It can't just do one thing. It needs to do 2 things or 3 things or even more just to be considered. And even then, sometimes like cards like this aren't considered. But still, like I will be putting it in a couple of my decks because I'm already running Impact Tremors, and it's not like the worst card ever, but it's just not like the best card ever. It was just put in there to give the deck extra range and kind of another way to win as well. So it's not that bad, but again, it's just one of those things that, you know, when you're looking at it and saying, well, this does the same thing for 1, and for 1 more mana I can also buff up my creatures. Sure, why not? Like, that's fine with me. Like, I'll pay that 1 extra mana to buff up my stuff as well. That's 100% fine. Even in a 4-color deck or whatever, or in a 5-color deck, I would think about taking this kind of card. But anyway, you guys can always let me know what you guys think. Write your thoughts down in the comments below. Am I so super wrong? You can let me know down there. And hope you've enjoyed one way or the other, and hope you'll join me again in another one.